Palestinians did not need the work of the new historians to know what happened.
Estamos aqui no nosso projeto História Islâmica para mais uma entrevista histórica com ele, Ilan Pappé, um dos maiores historiadores do mundo sobre a história do conflito que a gente tem, né, Israel e Palestina. E vamos falar sobre o lançamento desses dois incríveis livros do Ilan Pappé pela editora Elefante. O primeiro deles é uma breve história do conflito Israel e Palestina, que é incrível para você que é uma introdução para esse tema. E depois, A Maior Prisão do Mundo, uma história da faixa de Gaza. Esse livro, que foi publicado em 2017, ele é um resumo, digamos assim, de toda a história do que a gente tem do cerco de Gaza, né? Onde as pessoas vivem numa prisão a céu aberto, mas foi atualizado com a introdução abrangendo o que a gente tem hoje. And then after this short introduction in Portuguese, Mr. Ilan, I want to thank you for coming to our
Thank you.
and to give for us your knowledge on the subject. And first of all, I want to ask you, because since I started to know about your work, people called you from the new historians. What are the new historians in the Israeli-Palestine context?
Very nice to meet you, and very nice to be on this program. The New Historian is a small group of historians who were Israeli Jews, who worked on Israeli archives in the late 1980s, in particular focusing on the year 1948, the Nakba. And what they found in the archives challenged the Israeli narrative of 1948 and corroborated quite a lot of the claims made by Palestinians over the years about 1948. So it was a small group. The most important thing about them that they were professional historians and of course Israeli historians. Palestinians did not need the work of the new historians to know what happened, but apparently for the world it was important that Israeli historians said that what the Palestinians used to say was justified. So if you want, the new history made some of the Palestinian claims halal or kosherized. They kosherized the Palestinian narrative. Some Palestinians are a bit angry, and one can understand, because they said, we always said, but sometimes you need the other side to say, yes, we have good evidence that what you claim, because the Palestinian version was totally denied until the new historians came. People said it's imagination, propaganda, and the new historians showed with documentation, with archival material, that this was based on facts and truth.
Yeah. And why is so important this battlefield of history for Zionism? Why they need to try to distort the history of their own colonization? As a historian, of course, you see why it's so important for them.
It's very important for the Zionists because they want to be both colonizers and Democrats and progressive, or liberal and occupiers. At least until recently, I'm not so sure about the Zionists of today. We may talk about it a bit later, but definitely until 2022, the political elite of Israel wanted a good image in the West of a country that belongs to the community of democratic nations. But the reality on the ground contradicted this. So they fabricated history in order to show that they are not colonizers. For instance, they claimed that Palestine was empty when the Zionists arrived, which is a lie.
15 years later, the cinema is taking its first steps. Cameramen employed by the Lumiere brothers filming at Jerusalem Station provide the first moving pictures taken in Palestine. From now on, the camera is the recording eye, and what it records is this: a society much like that of Cairo, Damascus or Beirut, in an Arab city much like any other. By the end of the 19th century, Palestine has 500,000 inhabitants, of whom 30,000 live in Jerusalem. A veiled woman, a Sunni Muslim, one of the majority. An Orthodox Jew. He too turns away from the camera. Here we have an Armenian Pope. Each of the Christian denominations has its church here in the Holy City. The holy places of the three religions are scattered across a few hundred square meters. The Great Mosque is close to Christ's tomb. Further along, at the foot of the Wailing Wall, a Jew is reciting a prayer. He is wearing a Turkish tabush, and though he prays in Hebrew, his everyday language is Arabic. Jews form half the population of Jerusalem, but in the country as a whole, they make up less than 5% of the total. Christians account for 10% and Muslims 85%. All of them are subjects of the Sultan of Constantinople. There are no frontiers in the Ottoman Empire. There are administrative divisions in which, in this immense territory, Palestine occupies a mere 27,000 square kilometers, made up of 3 small districts in the south of the province of Damascus.
Then they claimed that the Palestinians decided to leave by themselves in 1948, which is a lie. And then they said that the Palestinian reaction to the occupation after 1967 is terrorism, nothing more than that. Not even Islamic terrorism after 2000. So they try to control the narrative, but the facts on the ground are against them. And that's why it's relatively easy actually to show that their historical version is not correct. But yes, it was very important to them. I would add something else. Zionism was a settler colonial movement, movements of settlers that come from Europe to somebody else's homeland, and they take it by force. So they need to create a historical version that justifies what they did. So not only do they say that the country was empty, everything that was in the country before belongs to them. They, very much like the white settlers did in North America, appropriating the Native American history, saying this was our land always, So yeah, history is, for settler colonial projects like Zionism, history is very important. And for the propaganda war, if you want, and the battle of narratives, you can call it, is very important because it doesn't affect politicians, unfortunately, but it does affect the public opinion. I think that's why it's so important.
And Zionism is always rebranding itself, because I see that people still using the biblical arguments to defend Israel, as the modern Israelis are like, people from the Bronze Age,
Yeah.
who are just returning. Why is it so important to still appeal? Because people talk about the West as this enlightened civilization that left the religion out. But why, in United States, of course, in Brazil also, people are still appealing to this notion of a Bible.
A biblical project.
Yeah, biblical history.
Well, it's interesting that you say it, because I think that, and you're absolutely right, they rebrand and rebrand themselves. So when Zionism began in the late 19th century, it was important to enlist the support of Christians, especially evangelical Christians. So Zionism supported the story that the Jews are returning to the homeland, which is also good for the Christians because it can bring back Jesus Christ and all this theory of the resurrection. Then the Zionist project became more secular. And then they branded themselves not as a Christian project, as they did in the beginning, but as we are the last front line of the West against barbarism, against everything that is not the West. We are the only democracy in the Middle East. What is interesting, that since the last 20 years, a new political elite is now controlling Zionism and Israel. And they go back to the biblical issue. They are not interested. They don't want to sell Israel as a democracy. They want to sell Israel as fulfillment of this Judeo-Christian messianic idea that the Jewish state is the beginning of a new period in history.
And you were the supporters of Israel, the many thousands who are in that hole, and the millions, the many millions in the United States and elsewhere, the Christian friends of Israel, you are always there for us. We have no better friends on earth than you. Thank you. When I say we have no greater friends than the many, many millions of Christian supporters of Israel in the United States and also in other parts of the world, I mean it. I know you've always stood with us. You stand with us because you stand with yourselves, because we represent that common heritage of freedom that goes back thousands of years. I know when you visit the state of Israel, when you go to the places mentioned in the Bible, you understand the force of that heritage. And I want you to know that I believe that America has no greater friend than Israel. And Israel has no greater friend than the United States. And in the United States, we have no greater friend than you.
Not just over, which is very frightening for all of us, because they don't only think about Palestine. They want to recreate what they read in the Old Testament, in the Bible, about the Kingdom of Solomon. The Kingdom of Solomon extended beyond what today is Palestine and Israel, into Lebanon, Jordan, Syria. This is, these people were very marginal 50 years ago, but today they are the political elite of Israel.
And on the subject of ethnic cleansing, how it was perpetrated, and combining this question with the one very important Zionist trope that the ethnic cleansing of Palestine happened for the same reasons and with the same impact with the ethnic cleansing of Jews of the Arab
world,
countries,
yes.
on the same time. How you see this conflagration of stories?
So first of all, the ethnic cleansing was in many ways prepared by the Zionist leader from the moment the early Zionists arrived in Palestine. Because the whole notion of Zionism was to have a Jewish state instead of Palestine. Palestine was an Arab country, part of the Muslim world. The vast majority of people were Arabs, whether Muslim or Christian, it doesn't matter. The Jews were less than 10%, and most of the Jews who were there before the arrival of Zionism saw themselves as Arabs, not the Zionists. From the very beginning, to the Zionist ideologues and leaders, it was clear that if they want to have their Jewish state the way they want it, they have to get rid of the Palestinians. But they didn't have the power to do it. So first of all, you can see the development of the ideas in their writing, in their speeches, in their novels, poems. In 1948, there was an historical opportunity to translate the ideas into a plan. First of all, they were able, under the umbrella of the British, to build military capacity, economic capacity. And they also were aware that the world would allow them to do this because of the Holocaust. So 3 years after the Holocaust, they said, we can now do this. And the end of the British rule was another reason. So in 1948, I would say that 1 year before the end of the mandate, from 1947 onwards, this very, fluid ideas were translated into a proper program, a master plan. And the master plan was to try and expel all the Palestinians from all of Palestine. But there were limitations. They had to have an agreement with Jordan. They were faced with some Arab opposition, Arab military opposition on the ground, and Palestinian resistance as well. So the plan was to get all of Palestine without Palestinians. The result was expulsion of half of Palestine's population, the destruction of half of Palestine's villages, 500, the demolition of most of the Palestinian towns, and they took over 78% of historical Palestine. So this was the plan and the implementation.
השתוללו בטנטורה, זה היה משהו נורא. טנטורה היה כפר עשיר, בתים יפים, גרים כמו אירופאים, אתה יודע, וגם אנשים היו לבושות ויפה, וזה באמת היה כפר... אחד אנס שם איזה ילדה בת 16, משהו כזה, אתה מבין? אבל זה מכוער מאוד, היה לנו בחור אחד, הוא נפטר, הוא היה פרא אדם, הוא לקח פשוט מאוד, ורצח אותם בתוך המכלאות. בתוך המכלאות, הם היו במכלאות, אתה יודע, חוטי ברזל כאלה, עגולים כאלה, אספו כל הגברים. הם יושבים שם, כולם, על הרצפה, ובא מישהו ולוקח תת מקלע ומתחיל זה, מחליף מחסנית, מה אתה חושב זה? אבל אנחנו לא היינו כאלה. הוא היה יוצא דופן, הבחור הזה, כן, מה שהוא עשה. והשתיקו את הדבר הזה, והיו חבר'ה שלקחו את הלוויורים ורדפו אחרי חבר'ה ושרפו אותם. זה היה משהו זוועתי, וזה אסור לספר, אני לא אדבר על זה, כי זה יכול להיות סקנדל שלם מהעניין הזה. אני לא רוצה לדבר על זה, וזהו. אבל זה היה, מה לעשות, זה היה.
זה דבר שאתה לא שוכח. 3-4 חודשים הראשונים הייתי רוצח.
מה זה אומר?
אני לא לקחתי שבויים. בזמן קרב, אם מישהו הרים ידיים, משהו כזה, לא לקחתי שבויים. זה זעזע אותי עד כדי כך, לא יכלתי לעבור לסדר היום. אם היה עומדת כיתה של זה עם ידיים למעלה, אז באותו יום הייתי רואה אותי, הייתי קוצר את כולם, עד כדי כך.
כמה אתה חושב אנשים הרגת ככה?
לא ספרתי. אני לא יכול לדעת בחיי. היה לי מקלע עם 250 כדורים. תראה, יריתי, נלחמתי כולם. אני לא יכול לספור.
Now, your question about, the propaganda, that there were two ethnic cleansing. There was no ethnic cleansing in the Arab world. One has to know the facts, and they're very different from different Arab countries. First of all, until the appearance of Zionism, very, very few Jews in Iraq, Syria, North Africa, Egypt were thinking of going to Palestine. They were happy to be, they felt patriotic about their own Arab nation states, and many of them were active in the national movements.
أنا من اليمن، أصلي يهودي يمني.
شو بتعني لك إسرائيل؟
شو بتعني لي؟ ما تعني لي ولا حاجة. لكن بلادي اليمن.
But the moment the Zionist movement was putting pressure on them to become Zionists, it created tension between them and the local Arab regimes. And yet, until 1948, hardly any Arab Jews came to Israel. Because of the Holocaust and because of the realization in 1948 that the Jews who were still in the West, especially those in Britain and the United States, are not going to come. They had too good life. There was no reason to come to Palestine. There was a demographic problem. And this is when the Israeli government began to put pressure. And they put pressure that eventually led some Jews to leave. But they did the pressure in all kinds of things. It was not an ethnic cleansing. For example, in Iraq, the Israeli Secret Service planted bombs in synagogues in Iraq in order to create panic. They sold the Yemenites a story that they already created a very biblical seal, which is not true. The Yemenites were surprised when they came. And also African Jews only came in the 60s and the 70s when the tensions grew. So this is not the same story. On another level altogether, I don't know one Palestinian or one even Iraqi, Moroccan or Syrian who objects to the idea that Jews who want to come back would come back.
Yeah.
But we know that the Israelis reject the ideas that the Palestinians would come back. So that's two different stories. But of course, for propaganda purposes, this kind of equation
Yeah.
was made.
And as a final question, sir,
Yeah.
one thing that I want to know, it's by this ability of Zionism they are always rebranding themselves. For example, for the evangelical Christians, they say that we are like a biblical state.
Right.
For the progressive left in the West, they say, oh, we have like great gay pride parade and everything. And why the people, they didn't see that, how can I say, this is a boneless state.
Yeah.
They are everything and nothing at the same time. Why this capacity of being rebranding itself always? How you see this from a historical perspective? Why they need this so much?
Yeah. Well, I think it comes back to the very beginning of Zionism. Zionism was a European project because Europe did not know how to deal with its own racism towards the Jews. They could not bring themselves, I mean, when I say they, these are European governments, intellectuals, could not bring themselves to recognize the Jews as equal people, as equal to the Europeans. So they were looking for a solution before, of course, the worst kind of solution was suggested by the Nazis, which was genocide. But we're talking many, many years before. And the solution they thought was to kick out the Jews of Europe, but build for them a European state outside of Europe. Now, if you think about it, the idea that anti-Semitism in Europe should be solved by imposing a Jewish Western state on the Arab world at the expense of the Palestinians, any normal person would have said this is immoral, but also impractical. How can you impose? Now, the only way you can turn an immoral and an impractical idea into reality is by force. And the force needs an alliance. So always needed then and they need now a global alliance. And in order to make the alliance as wide as possible, they try to cater to everyone. So there are contradictions. Many people, if you will do a convention of everyone who supports Israel, you will see people who don't agree with each other. But Israel serves their interests. So they were trying to do this, but it's not working because the way Israel developed in the last 20 years, Israel is losing the progressives who don't buy anymore. And I think there are a lot of good, very religious Christian people who really believe that as Christians they should not condone what's going on, and a lot of Jews do not want to be associated with it. So the big alliance is now smaller, but it includes right-wing, fascist parties, military industry. It's still strong, but it's not as strong as it used to be.
So, Mr. Ilan, I would like to thank you not just for this interview, but for your life,
Thank you very much.
dedication for people,
Appreciate it.
and for our shared humanity about everything. E para você que assistiu essa entrevista, pessoal, entre no site da Editora Elefante e adquiram esses livros incríveis do nosso grande historiador Ilan Pappé. E comentem aqui o que acharam dessa entrevista e até o nosso próximo encontro aqui no canal História Islâmica.
They created a very religious Jewish state.
It's a honeybee. This speech is delicious because they are,
E se você gostou desse vídeo, considere se tornar um apoiador do projeto História Islâmica com Mansur Peixoto. Fornecemos ao público diariamente artigos acadêmicos, vídeos informativos, postagens educacionais nas mais diversas mídias sociais, além de palestras gratuitas e participações em entrevistas e lives. Financie essa iniciativa cultural através do Pix, contato@historiaislamica.com.br. História Islâmica com Mansur Peixoto.